Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of CGC. Hopefully, you guys got a good chance to view the videos from last week. One, I was talking about the quote unquote negative effects that a certain fan base thinks that review bombing Starfield is going to have on Microsoft and how they actually might be playing into their hands. And of course, the most recent one we had was going over the entire situation with Jim Ryan leaving PlayStation after 30 years, and I believe only after about 4 years of being the head of SIE branch of Sony. Today, we're going to continue talking about Sony a bit, and this video is kind of going to lean back toward another video I made, I think probably maybe a year ago, or maybe it might have been just a few months ago. I can't really tell. But I'll link it in the at the end of this video, and it's basically how PlayStation isn't what I remember it being, or isn't what I grew up with it being. So I'm 40 years old, more than 40 actually. Let's just say that, and I remember when Sony first came out, they were hyper aggressive. And despite what people are, rambling about with Microsoft and all of the aggressive moves they've been making as of late, Sony was just as, if not more aggressive. There's videos out there documenting it literally. Um, and I remember the coolest thing about PlayStation was that not only were they hyper aggressive in getting like third party publishers to back up their counsel, but their first party stuff was unique. It was different. A lot of you guys might be too young to remember. A lot of you guys might remember, but like Twisted Metal, Jet Moto, Wild Arms. After the success of Final Fantasy VII, they made an RPG of their own called Legend of Dragoon. I believe it only got one game. Um, I want to say there was another Japanese RPG that Sony was responsible for. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but it was. I remember it was turn based, but you could like link combos together. And they ended up being like three or four of them, but I think Sony only published the first one here themselves. They let somebody else publish like the next few, and they obviously got worse and worse, which is probably why Sony didn't bother at all. But my whole point being, up until the PS4, and we're talking about like the very beginning of the PS4, they had a very diverse lineup of games. Now, you guys have heard me say before that they've kind of broken uh, their lineup down to these third person over the shoulder narrative based games, and they're great games, right? Like nobody's going to sit here and honestly tell you that God of War, what was it, 2018, 2019 is a bad game. It's not a bad game. It has its faults. It's not perfect. It's not the best game all time, that IGN nonsense that was posted, but it's a pretty damn good game. Spider-Man, pretty damn good game. It's not the greatest superhero game all time. It's a good Spider-Man game, which had been done before. Let's just be honest. It's been done before. It was done before Insomniac, but it's a damn good Spider-Man game, right? Last of Us, amazing game, great narrative. Not the best third-person action game ever, and Last of Us 2 definitely doesn't fit that mold either. My whole point is they make really good games, but in a specific genre. And Sony used to be a lot more diverse than that. They used to make multiplayer games. They didn't make multiplayer games that were as popular as your Halos or your Gears of War. They used to make multiplayer games. They used to do all kinds of different stuff. And we may or may not have alluded to this in the last video, but I think a lot of the reason, or one of the many reasons that Jim Ryan is being pushed out, if indeed he's actually being pushed out and not just retiring, is that somehow that entire plot got lost, right? We're talking about a guy who, for all intents and purposes, had turned his company into a third party dependent you know, singular genre creating, and then not only was it just singular genre, but apparently he was trying to turn that genre into something with microtransactions and live service tropes and things like that. And it's just like, bro, dude, this ain't gonna cut it. And luckily enough, somebody at Sony decided enough was enough. This guy's got to go. And the ABK deal and his shortcomings in that definitely played a part in it. But I would like to think somebody at Sony looked at the culture and the way it was trending and said, this ain't gonna work. And if this guy believes this is how we should do things, then and it's a cautionary tale of, businessmen are good for business, but maybe not good for games. I don't know if anybody really gets that, but like every time one of these companies has put somebody who is like uniquely a numbers and business guy in charge, the culture gets messed up and things get lost in translation. And now the most recent news we've seen is that The Last of Us Factions 2 has been put on ice, and that Naughty Dog fired about 25 developers and told them not to say anything about it. Whole bunch of messy nonsense. Um, Look, at this point, I'm of the belief that a lot of stuff you probably saw announced by Sony under Jim Ryan's reign is either going to go through a severe amount of changes or be canned because it's just not going to work. Like, I don't believe that Factions will come out as it was originally planned. Now, will they turn it just into a multiplayer game without the live service crap? Or more importantly, what I think they could do is take Factions, take all of the live service stuff out, at least as far to the extent of, oh, we're selling you this skin or these guns and this all that BS every week or every month, and they're just going to put it in the remaster that they eventually will make of The Last of Us 2 for PS5, because they're not going to give us. It's clear and present that they're not going to give us a 60 frames per second update or upgrade for $10. I think they're still on that, and it's not because the newer culture won't want to do it. If it's already being made, then what the hell's the point, right? I think when they make a Last of Us 2 remaster, a scaled down, simple but hopefully fun version of Factions will be thrown into the Last of Us 2 remaster, and there's a lot of games that we've heard rumblings of that probably won't happen now. I think there was a chance that Sony had licenses for a multiplayer Marvel game. So it was gonna make Spider-Man, the new Wolverine, and then this Marvel game, whatever it is. And it's gonna have more, familiar IPs. Not that Spider-Man and Wolverine aren't familiar, obviously, but it's going to have even more IPs thrown in there. I don't know how that will work with EA's deals with Iron Man and Black Panther, but I'm pretty sure they'll find a way to, work that out. Regardless, that game may not happen now. I mean, it was heavily rumored. You heard more than a few talking heads mention that one. That one probably won't happen. I don't know what's going to happen with Twisted Metal. Like, there's a lot of games that we've heard rumblings about that now that Sony may be making a culture shift, these games may not come out. And if Twisted Metal is a victim in that, that's really unfortunate. But chances are, under Jim Ryan's reign, Twisted Metal was going to be some kind of live service car combat game. That could be done now. I believe they've had like two of the studios they bought cancel their games. I think one of those studios closed or fired a bunch of people. Something unfortunate happened to them. But it's unfortunate that the amount of success they are having this generation, is really just coming down to the popularity of the brand, not necessarily what they're delivering, right? They had a good first year. They had a decent third year. It seems like the years and their impactfulness for the consoles have kind of like flip flop. Like the very first year Xbox Series really didn't have that much. PlayStation launched with like I think the Demon Souls remake. I think Returnal came out their first year. The Ghost of Tsushima DLC was a couple of things. I think actually Last of Us 2 launched earlier that year as well. You guys correct me if I'm wrong about that. And then the very next year, Microsoft put out like Flight Simulator, and all this other stuff. And yeah, they weren't necessarily the biggest titles. I think Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, and they won Publisher of the Year. And then last year, Microsoft put out like two games. I think High on Life was probably the biggest. High on Life and Pentiment. No, not Pentiment. Is it Pentiment? Maybe just say High on Life and one other game were like the biggest deals from Xbox last year. And Sony put out like God of War Ragnarok, I believe Horizon Forbidden West. And now this year, yeah, Sony's put out Spider-Man. Yeah, Sony had the Final Fantasy 16 rub. But honestly, we got to be real here. Microsoft is kicking their ass this year. And we can go, there's just people that's probably gonna type in the comments, even though you guys don't leave comments that much. Don't be afraid to comment. I don't take anything about this stuff personally. I only talk about what I see. Never be afraid to comment. Leave some comments. Let's have a conversation. But anyway, going back to what I was just saying, outside of those two releases, and I think the Burning Shore DLC came out for Horizon Forbidden West this year. Sony really didn't put out anything of huge note as of right now. Now, Final Fantasy 16 was a big deal, but we really don't know how successful that game was. Like the news on that kind of like changes every week or so. And Spider-Man will more than likely be a big deal, but like I've always had this conversation with friends where like they may say, well, Microsoft's whole thing is dependent on Game Pass, and how is that better than Sony's exclusives? And it's actually a very easy question to answer. If you take into account that Sony just raised the prices of their services, and for that price, say you get the full extent of their service, which is, I believe, not essential, but whatever the highest tier is, gold or something like that, or platinum. You get to stream old PS3 games that you probably already bought. You get to play PS2 games that you probably already owned. And you get to download PS1 games that you could probably emulate on the phone that you carry in your pocket every day to work. And not trying to be, facetious, but I'm just being honest with you, right? You're paying the same price for that as you do for Game Pass, or around the same price. And when these AAA 9 out of 10 bangers drop from Sony, you have to give them $70 for each of those. Now they increased the price by like 20 or 40 bucks a year. I think it's just 20. But they're still not doing day and date. And as I stated before, I don't think Sony can afford to do that. I said that in the previous video. I don't think Sony can actually afford to do that level of, gratis for their consumers, because I'm pretty sure as much money as Microsoft is making, they could be making more if they weren't giving their games away in that service like that. However, they're netting positive because they're able to throw so much stuff in there that you're compelled to subscribe. You're compelled to give them money to get access to those games without having to pay $70 a pop. And I will always be of the state of mind that getting 8 to 12 8 out of 10s is way better than getting 3 9s. Like if I can get 8 to 12 8 out of 10 games a year for 140, $160, as opposed to getting three 9 out of 10s for $220. I mean, do the math. Three for 100 extra something dollars more, or 70 something extra dollars more than it does. The math makes sense if you look at it that way. Like in Game Pass this year, and we just told you, PlayStation, you got Final Fantasy 16, you got the Burning Shores DLC, and you're gonna get Spider-Man in about a week or so. And I can't wait to play that. I already got a queue to download on my PS5. Finally went ahead and beat the first one. Don't ask. My backlog is stupid. Finally went ahead and beat the first one in preparation for that game. Still got to knock out Miles Morales, actually. But you got those three games, and one of them's a DLC, so you got to have the game to even bother touching the other one. And with Microsoft, I gotten Age of Empires 2. I believe Age of Empires 4 dropped this year as well. But both Age of Empires 2 remastered and Age of Empires 4 remastered dropped. Now, those are very niche genres. I understand that. However, still, they are games that somebody's going to enjoy. Somebody's going to want to play them. Because they're really big deals. In that genre, those games considered really big deals. We got Hi-Fi Rush. We got Pentiment. So far, that's 3 8s and a 9. Because I believe Pentiment's at like a 9 or maybe a high 8 itself. You got Forza Motorsport coming out next week. That game's an 8 right now. You got Starfield, which is an 8. You got Redfall, which is like probably a 5 or a 6. But check out one of my videos. I'm pretty sure that game's going to have a resurgence for a particular reason. I won't go into it now. Watch the video again. I'll leave the link at the end. You got Lies of P, which is not an Xbox party first title. But on PlayStation, I got to pay $70 to play that. On Xbox, I just got to be a part of Game Pass. That's a damn good Souls-like game. Like, I really don't even mess with Souls games like that. That one in particular has kind of like, it's a nice game. Do yourself a favor and play it. I think the Batman game, the Arkham Knights game, which was critically panned, but a lot of players seem to like it, whereas critics really didn't. That game's in Game Pass now. Like Warhammer 40K Darktide just dropped in Game Pass. Like, there's a lot of solid 7, 8, almost 9 games dropping in Game Pass, and like this month has been ridiculous. Last month was ridiculous. Like, the only dry spot they had was like from March to maybe June or July, and I could be wrong. Like, I think Redfall dropped in May, so that would have been like a bad mark on that period of time, because Redfall just was not it. But if you look at the money you spent, then with one of the other, the choice is obvious if you have a brain, right? If you have the choice between the two, first of all, I say if you have the luxury of being able to get all of it, why not, right? Enjoy life. But if you have a choice between the two, like, man, PlayStation wasn't it this year. Not for one Spider-Man game and a Final Fantasy game you may or may not like, because it does not play like traditional Final Fantasy games. If you didn't like 15, you probably ain't gonna like 16, is what I'm saying. So, all that being said, this culture change is quite different for Sony. Hopefully they're getting back to some kind of competitive normalcy. It's going to be hard, and I don't want anybody who's a loyal Sony supporter to come from my head, but all I'm saying is you're going to see the effects of this Jim Ryan stuff for a few years. He may have seriously damaged what Sony could be for a while, because every game he was even talking about or was even being rumored about bringing back, I'm pretty sure it was going to be a live service game. Like, if you look at the gameplay loop of Twisted Metal, what else would it have been? So if the team that's working on that is indeed still working on it, if they haven't been told to scrap it, then 9 times out of 10, they are probably going to have to severely redesign how things in it work. You talking about progression, how you earn stuff. All this stuff's probably gonna have to be swapped out, because as Jay Wood, uh, one of my favorite YouTubers, likes to say, though, that mythical cash cow that is live service games, it's just not. It doesn't make sense. You see, Epic just fired, I believe it was 90. Was it 90 or 900 people, because they're not making the money they thought they would be making. That stuff is, it's lightning in a bottle type stuff, man. You don't dedicate a full lineup to it. And again, I'm almost certain that a lot of stuff that people were hoping that Jim Ryan was bringing back, I heard rumors of a Killzone game. What are the chances that was probably live service? Twisted Metal was probably live service. We kind of now know that Last of Us Factions was going to be a live service game. Had no business being that. Just make a multiplayer game and attach it to the single player game. That's all you had to do. Nothing crazy, right? Microsoft's good at that, or Microsoft's thriving with that, because of how they're able to distribute their games. Until Sony can say, you know what, for a fee of X amount of dollars a month or X amount of dollars per year, you will get the highest tier of our services, and we'll throw our first party games in there. Until Sony can do that, they can't compete that way. So why would you dedicate most of your lineup to live service games? Like, I didn't say this before, and I'll say this again, and I don't want the Xbox fanboys coming for me, because I don't mean this negatively, but I do mean this when I say Xbox games are going to do well despite themselves. The system is foolproof. They can make dog crap games if they want to and put them in Game Pass, and somebody's going to try it. The problem is, for Sony, they're not making dog crap games. They're actually making good titles. Are they better than the stuff Sony makes? Debatable. More than likely, most people would say no. Especially a particular fan base would obviously say no for obvious reasons. But they're good games. You can sit here and say, yeah, Hi-Fi Rush ain't better than Spider-Man, but Hi-Fi Rush ain't a bad game. Age of Empires 2 and 4 aren't games that, most gamers are going to be like, damn, I got to get my hands on that. But they're good games. Same thing with Lies of P. Lies of P may not be the best Souls-like, but it's a damn good Souls-like game. Like, you get my point. Gran Turismo might be better in some aspects than Forza Motorsport. Forza Motorsport's not a slouch. It's not a bad racing sim. And that's really all it needs to be, right? It doesn't need to be, oh, we're absolutely better than them, or we matched them 1-for-1. You guys got to remember, back in the days on like a Sega Genesis, there were like a ton of football games. But the only two ever really competed every year. That was Madden and Sega Sports Talk Football. Nintendo didn't even bother putting out a football game but once, and that game was horrible. Action replay. Don't come after me. It was not a good game. Or Pro Action Football, it was not a good game. It had some cool features, but it was not a good game. There was like a period of like 4 or 5 years where Madden, and I think it was Joe Montana was attached to the Sega one, were going like neck and neck. Joe Montana's got this, but Madden's got that. Sega's game was never really better than Madden. And the same thing happening with the Dreamcast. If you want to push forward in the future a little bit with 2K, 2K was never better than Madden until arguably 2K5, and for a number of reasons, the price, the presentation, we can go on about that. But the fact that 2K was still good, it didn't have to. I don't have to beat you. I just have to be good. Microsoft has figured that out, guys. Microsoft's figured that out. And they also figured out that, you know what, we can do live service light. There's no way in hell you could have told me when it launched that Sea of Thieves would be what it is now. That game was boring as hell. Sorry, Sea of Thieves fans, don't come for me. I'm just saying, I tried to play it with my wife and some friends, and we were all bored to tears to the point where two of us actually fell asleep playing it. It was a boring game. But one Twitch streamer doing a bunch of crazy stuff, sneaking on people's boats and shooting people and stealing their treasures, sinking ships on purpose and all that stuff. And between that and a dedicated team just constantly pumping content into it and making it better and better month by month, year by year. And now it has a full-fledged community. It is probably one of the most played games on Steam, if not on Xbox as well. And the same thing can be said for Fallout 76. That game was, without a doubt, panned by almost everybody. No one really liked that game, probably except for a small portion of the audience that was attached to it. And it's still here. Because when you make a service and you tell them, I mean, it's there if you want to try it, which is essentially what Microsoft's done. Why wouldn't you? If you're paying all of that money every year, or if you're smart like me and you're using their rewards program to automatically give you months with the points. I mean, look into that, guys. Trust me, it's a beautiful thing. Why the hell would you not try Fallout 76? It's just sitting there. Why the hell would you not try Age of Empires? Oh, I don't like RTS games. Okay, fine. You ain't got to pay for it. Download it, try it, and if you don't like it, cut it off. You might find out you like it. Or as Microsoft likes to say, discover your next favorite game. It is a can't lose situation. And in a week, they might have Call of Duty. Scary times, dog. Scary times. Like, PlayStation went bad. It's down bad at the wrong time, bro. You can sit here and you can comment about units sold, numbers, and all that stuff. That's cool. In order to get their hands on their coolest stuff, they got to pay for it. On top of paying for online. These MFs at Microsoft, yeah, you pay us for the service. If you pay for a certain tier and you pay for service, we'll give you everything we make. We don't care. And then on top of that, you can stream the stuff on your phone. And apparently, well, it's a rumor a week or two ago, we're going to let you stream PC games. Like, there's an Instagram channel out there where the guy starts off by saying, shit's getting weird. Like, third place ain't what you think it is. Sony ain't what they used to be. Hopefully they'll get there. But this shit is not. This ain't what you think it is, bro. Like, they in trouble. They're in big trouble. And shout outs to Iron Lord's podcast. They were talking about this past Sunday. This ain't looking sweet for them. Now, I'm not going to go in full direction. I'll shout out and respect to King David and say that Sony's going to be gone next gen. But I've had talks with friends. I don't see it as being impossible that if they don't recover from this Apple or Netflix buys, I never thought of Netflix doing it, but certainly I think Apple could do it. Because something culturally is going to have to shift. They're going to cancel a lot of games. And they're already doing it. The KOTOR's gotten the axe. The Last of Us Factions is looking like it's approaching the chopping board. I'm pretty sure a lot of other stuff is getting the axe because it's live service. That Twisted Metal game. Like, if you're not giving this stuff away, what chances it has? Like, Microsoft can put, I think and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the biggest criticism of like Forza Motorsport is that it's lacking some content or features. It's a live service game. In about a month, 2 months, maybe even a week, there'll be more stuff in it. And because if you have Game Pass, you're playing it at no extra cost. You'll whine, you'll bitch, but you won't care. Look at Halo Infinite, for God's sake. Look at Halo Infinite. What was that? 2 years ago when it came out, and look at it now. My God. I don't care how you feel about Halo Infinite, and we could sit here and mope and say, oh, well, it should have had all that stuff in at launch. And you're right. But Microsoft knew it was a live service title, and they knew regardless, and don't tell me they didn't, because they got people in suits who look at this shit and analyze the market. They've told you before what you're going to be doing, and you're doing it. Microsoft looked at that game, and I guarantee they was like, oh, yeah, just put it out. And I think I made a video saying they'll add a whole bunch of stuff, and all of these people that are crying about it, it'll be like it was never an issue in the first place. And it was so. So, again, I don't want this to be a doom and gloom hit piece on PlayStation. I really do hope they can recover. But I don't think The Last of Us Factions is going to be the last casualty of this entire situation. I think the way it was being designed and built does not fit into how Sony wants to move forward. And I'm pretty sure that Twisted Metal game, which hasn't been announced, is quietly going to either get axed or changed. And I'm pretty sure a lot of stuff is. The Horizon multiplayer game that was rumored, that probably ain't happening now. Like, I don't know what Sony's going to do. And I fear for them because I don't know what they're going to do. The live service stuff ain't going to work. Making single player games. I know I was about to end the video, but I have to bring this up. There was a big controversy apparently about Spider-Man only being 30 hours to get 100% completion, which to me, I don't really care as long as the game's good. But, charge people $70 for a game, they may want more than 30 hours out of it. Now, mind you, this was a speed runner who did it, so nobody's going to do it in the time he do. Most people, not nobody, but most people probably aren't going to do it in the time he's going to do it. But, like, if that's true, if most people are finishing this game, without 100% in it, 15 to 20 hours, that might be a problem. That might be a problem. And, of course, I don't expect a lot of critics to mention that. But it'll be player word of mouth, so on and so forth, that might damn it. And I think Spider-Man's going to sell, don't get me wrong. And I think it's going to probably get like a 9 overall Metacritic score. But, yeah, I think that might end up hurting the potential for the next one. We'll see. We shall see. There's a lot of weird stuff happening right now. I never expected the company that was essentially on top. Well, technically speaking, Nintendo's on top, but you get what I'm saying. I never really expected them to have to shift culture like this so rapidly. Like, canceling games is not a small thing. That's a lot of money wasted. That's a lot of resources wasted. You got to figure out whether you're going to reallocate all of the resources and everything toward another project, or if you're just going to take the hit. And if there were like 8 to 9 games as a service, live service games being played by Sony, that's a huge ass hit. Because I guarantee you, State of Decay 3 probably going to be a live service game. Just like State of Decay. State of Decay 2 technically is a live service game. That game still gets updates. Launched as a 7 out of 10 Metacritic game. Fan base loves it. So what the hell does that Metacritic score mean? Microsoft's got a perfect system to launch games as a service games, because why not play it? Sony does not. And they put all their eggs in that basket without having a basket to hold the damn eggs with. And now they have to reflip their culture. Was essentially mid-gen. We're going into year 4, mid-gen. I don't envy him. Might be a rough time. We'll see, guys. Peace and love to all of you. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you in the next video. Later.